Ukraine broke through a Russian position on Thursday that had been assessed as one of the most prepared defensive lines on the entire contact line. And the NATO weapons that broke it had each been chosen for a specific job that no other weapon in the package could do. Thursday, March 5th, First Light, Donetsk Oblast. The Ukrainian 21st Mechanized Brigade's lead company pushed through a breach in the outer minefield that had taken 3 nights to create, not cleared in a single overnight operation. 3 separate nights of crawling engineers, manual probing, and 2 BMR-3MA mine-clearing vehicles working in 30-minute windows before the noise and thermal signature required them to pull back. Each night had produced a lane, 4 meters wide, 300 meters deeper into the minefield than the previous night, marked with IR reflective stakes that were invisible to naked eyes and navigation-grade precise to the engineer platoon's GPS receivers. 3 nights. 3 lanes converging into one passable corridor through a minefield that the Russian engineering staff had laid at 1,100 mines per kilometer across a 600-meter belt. The corridor on the morning of March 5th was 12 meters wide at its narrowest point and ran 600 meters from the forward line to the Russian trench network's outer edge. 12 meters was enough for 1 vehicle at a time, which meant the breach was a bottleneck. Every vehicle in the assault would have to funnel through it. But it was a bottleneck that existed where 4 days earlier, there had been no passage at all. The Russian trench network at the outer edge of the corridor had been under observation for 6 weeks, not by Ukrainian ground assets that would have been detected crossing the minefield, by a NATO partner satellite feed that had been repositioned over the operational sector and that had been providing 4 times daily imagery with a resolution sufficient to track individual vehicle movements inside the trench network's perimeter. 6 weeks of imagery had produced a defensive picture specific enough to assign fires targets to individual positions. The Kornet ATGM teams at grid references fixed by the signature of their launchers, the 82mm mortar positions fixed by the burn marks from previous firing missions, the crew-served machine gun positions fixed by the consistency of their placement across 42 consecutive days of imagery. The intelligence picture that the 21st Brigade's planning staff had built the attack plan from was not an assessment. It was a documented record of who was where across 6 weeks of observation. The plan attacked the record. The fire's preparation for the breakthrough began at 4:40 a.m., 50 minutes before the lead vehicle entered the breach corridor. Not artillery suppression across the trench network, precision sequencing. The first fires were HIMARS GMLRS rockets, targeting the 2 Russian battalion command posts that communications intercept had fixed the previous night. Both struck within a 12-second window, both assessed destroyed on thermal observation from the TB2 overhead. At 4:50 a.m., the PZH-2000 battery opened with Excalibur rounds against the 7 Kornet positions that the satellite imagery had fixed. The sequence ran north to south, starting with the positions on the flank that would engage the assault force first as it exited the breach corridor, and ending with the positions in the center sector that would be most operationally dangerous once the force was inside the trench network. 5 of the 7 confirmed destroyed in 38 minutes of precision fires. 1 assessed as a probable hit. The launcher was at the grid, but the post-strike thermal showed ambiguous damage. 1 showed no impact. The round impacted 18 meters from the designated aim point, outside the Excalibur's normal circular error probable, likely caused by a GPS signal degradation event that lasted 4 seconds and affected the round's guidance in its final phase of flight. The GPS degradation was Russian EW. The counter-battery radar's SIGINT element identified the emission source, a Javelin GPS jammer 12 kilometers northeast, at 4:58 a.m., 8 minutes after the degraded miss. The identification was transmitted to the fire cell. The GMLRS rocket impacted the Javelin position at 5:04 a.m., 12 minutes after the jammer had caused the Excalibur to miss. The Kornet team had 12 minutes of additional life from the jammer. After the jammer was gone, the fire cell cued a second Excalibur at 5:07 a.m. The round impacted at 5:08 a.m. The team that had survived the first round because of 4 seconds of GPS degradation did not survive the second. What's your call? Type A if the identification and destruction of the Russian GPS jammer within 12 minutes of the degraded miss, restoring Excalibur accuracy before the assault entered the breach, was the most operationally critical fire sequence of the preparation. Type B if the simultaneous HIMARS strikes on both battalion command posts at 4:40 a.m., eliminating command coordination before the assault launched, was more decisive. Drop your answer below. The lead vehicle entered the breach corridor at 5:30 a.m. Not a Leopard, a BMR-3MA mine-clearing vehicle. The same engineering vehicle that had spent 3 nights creating the corridor, now running back through it at maximum speed with its mine-clearing flail active as an additional precaution against any mines the night clearance had missed or that Russian engineers had attempted to place in the corridor during the previous 12 hours. The BMR-3MA's crew had been offered the option of not leading the assault phase. They had declined the option. They ran the corridor at 14 kilometers per hour, the maximum safe speed for the flail and soil conditions, and cleared it in 4 minutes without detonating a mine. The corridor was clean. The radio call at 5:34 a.m. from the BMR-3MA commander to the assault company commander was 2 words in Ukrainian that translated as corridor clear. The lead Leopard entered the corridor at 5:35 a.m. The 6 surviving Kornet positions that the pre-assault fires had produced, 5 confirmed destroyed, 1 probable, 1 re-engaged and destroyed with the second round after the jammer was eliminated, meaning 7 engaged and all 7 assessed non-functional by 5:08 a.m., were the result that the 3-hour fires preparation had been designed to produce. Not suppression. Destruction of specific systems before the armor entered the ground where those systems could engage it. The difference between suppression and destruction in a breach operation is the difference between a crew that keeps its head down while the armor passes and a crew that fires when the suppression lifts. Suppression lifts. Destroyed launchers do not fire. The pre-assault fires had been designed around destruction, specifically of the systems that pose the greatest threat to the lead armor in the corridor and immediate post-corridor ground. All 7 had been addressed. 0 were operational when the Leopard crossed the outer edge of the corridor at 5:38 a.m. The CV-90 infantry fighting vehicles, the Swedish-manufactured 40 mm Bofors cannon system that the 21st Brigade had been operating for 7 months following delivery, were the second element through the corridor, following the first 3 Leopards. The CV-90's role in the assault was trench suppression, its 40 mm cannon reaching into the trench network's unprotected sections and positions that the Leopard main gun was not optimally configured to address. The Leopard's 120 mm gun-firing DM-12 Heat was the system for the overhead-covered fighting positions, the concrete reinforced command sections, the positions where the round's fragmentation pattern inside a covered space produced catastrophically higher lethality than a direct impact on the exterior. The CV-90's 40 mm was the system for the open trench sections, the exposed crew positions, the positions where the cannon's rapid fire and precision were more appropriate than a 120 mm main gun round. The 2 systems were not redundant. They were complementary, each covering the target categories that the other's munition type was suboptimal for. The crews knew the distinction. The operation order had specified it. The distinction had been rehearsed. The trench network contact began at 5:41 a.m., 11 minutes after the first vehicle entered the breach corridor. 3 Russian crews served positions that had survived the fire's preparation, 2 machine gun positions in the forward trench sections that the Excalibur had not targeted because they were not Kornet positions and because the fire's plan had prioritized anti-armor systems, and 1 RPG team in an unroofed fighting position at the trench junction engaged the lead Leopard and the first CV-90 as they exited the corridor onto the trench network's outer edge. The CV-90 took an RPG impact on its rear left track assembly that damaged the track and reduced the vehicle to a crawl, but did not penetrate the hull. The crew reported the damage on the command net and continued engaging with the 40 mm cannon from the reduced mobility position. The Leopard's trophy APS was not triggered. The RPG had been aimed at the CV-90, not the Leopard, and had missed the Leopard by 4 meters. The 2 machine gun positions were suppressed by the second CV-90's 40 mm within 30 seconds of the contact initiation. Both were subsequently engaged and destroyed by the Leopard's coaxial 7.62 mm when the suppression allowed a precise aim point. Subscribe to my channel and hit the bell. Every weapon system, every fire's mission, every tactical decision in this breakthrough, broken down at the level that the news coverage never reaches. The damaged CV-90 was the first equipment loss of the breakthrough. It was not catastrophic. The vehicle was mobile at reduced speed, the crew was unhurt, and the 40mm cannon was fully functional. It was a degraded but still operationally contributing element. The decision about whether to recover the damaged CV-90 from its current position or leave it contributing fires in the degraded mobility position was made by the crew commander without a radio call to hire. The operation order had specified that crew commanders had authority to make vehicle employment decisions within their own section. The crew commander chose to stay. The CV-90 fired 140 rounds of 40mm from its reduced mobility position in the next 23 minutes. It was the vehicle that cleared the northern trench junction of the 3 Russian RPG teams that had repositioned there from the southern section. When the Leopard's direct fire made the southern approach untenable for them, the decision to stay and fight in the damaged track was the decision that prevented the northern junction from becoming a personnel casualty event for the Ukrainian infantry that cleared it 40 minutes later. The anti-drone layer of the NATO weapons package had been operating continuously since before the breach began. Russian Lancet kamikaze drones had been targeting Ukrainian armored vehicles in the sector for 3 weeks, with 4 confirmed Lancet kills on Ukrainian equipment in the preceding 10 days. 2 BMPs, 1 T-64BV, and 1 engineering vehicle. The 21st Brigade's counter-drone response had been built around 2 EW jamming vehicles, positioned on the reverse slope of the ridgeline, behind the breach, operating frequency-hopping jamming profiles against the Lancet's control frequencies, and 2 RBS-70 manpad systems positioned for the altitude bands where the Lancet operated if it switched to an autonomous terminal attack profile that the jamming couldn't fully defeat. 3 Lancet drone contacts appeared on the tactical air picture at 5:44 a.m., 13 minutes into the trench contact phase. All 3 were attempting to approach the breach corridor from the northeast, targeting the vehicle column that was still funneling through the 12-meter-wide passage 1 vehicle at a time. 2 were jammed and crashed before reaching the effective engagement range. The 3rd switched to autonomous terminal guidance at 600 meters from the column and was engaged by the RBS-70. The RBS-70 round impacted the Lancet at 180 meters from the nearest vehicle in the column. 0 vehicles were hit, 0 vehicles were lost to Lancet attack during the breakthrough. The M777 150mm towed howitzer battery operating in the supporting fires role. 19 kilometers southwest had been assigned the counter-battery mission, responding to any Russian artillery that attempted to engage the assault force during the breakthrough. It had not fired during the pre-assault preparation, which had been handled by the PZH-2000's superior displacement speed. Once the assault force was in the breach corridor and physical proximity to the Russian trench made the counter-battery problem more urgent. A Russian artillery round that missed the assault force and impacted 50 meters from the corridor entrance was a round that could still kill personnel in the breach queue. The M777 battery took primary counter-battery responsibility. At 5:52 a.m., the AN-TPQ-36 Firefinder radar acquired a Russian 2S-1 Gvozdika self-propelled howitzer firing from a position 8 kilometers northeast of the breach. The M777 battery had a firing solution at 5:53 a.m. The 135mm rounds impacted the Gvozdika's position at 5:56 a.m., 3 minutes from radar acquisition to impact. The Gvozdika fired 2 rounds before the counter-battery response arrived. Both of its rounds impacted in the open ground, 200 meters west of the breach corridor entrance. Neither hit anything. The Gvozdika was destroyed before its crew could adjust the fires. The Javelin teams attached to the 21st Brigade's assault infantry had been positioned in overwatch on the ridgeline behind the breach since before the assault launched, covering the eastern approach to the breach corridor against armored counterattack. At 6:14 a.m., 34 minutes into the trench contact phase, 2 T-72B3 tanks emerged from a covered position 1,800 meters east of the corridor entrance and began moving toward the breach at high speed. They had apparently been held in a covered position as a reactive reserve, released when the Russian command post at the southern sector, one of the two struck by HIMARS at 4:40 a.m., was assessed as destroyed, and the sector commander decided that the reserve could no longer wait for orders that were not arriving. The two tanks moving on their own authority toward the breach, without artillery support and without infantry coordination, was a tactically dangerous move against a position that had Javelin teams in overwatch. The first Javelin launched at 6:14 a.m. at the lead T-72B3 at 1,600 meters. Top attack mode. The warhead impacted the turret roof. The T-72B3's roof armor at the impact point was 45 mm, the same thin section that every Javelin team and every military analyst had been noting since the system entered service. The tandem charge penetrated, and the secondary detonation destroyed the vehicle. The second T-72B3 had stopped when the first was hit. A crew reaction that was tactically understandable and operationally fatal, because a stopped T-72B3 at 1,400 meters from a Javelin team in Overwatch was a T-72B3 that was not making the evasive movement that might have complicated the second engagement's geometry. The second Javelin impacted at 6:15 a.m. The second T-72B3 burned. The counterattack that the Russian sector commander had released without coordination had lasted 90 seconds. What would you do as the Russian regimental commander at 6:15 a.m. on March 5th? Your 2-battalion command posts destroyed before the assault started, all 7 Kornet positions eliminated, the Gvozdika counter-battery shot taken in 3 minutes, both reserve T-72B3s gone in 90 seconds, with the Ukrainian 21st Brigade clearing your trench network and the breach corridor fully open behind them? Comment your remaining options below. The trench network clearance ran for 31 minutes after the Javelin counterattack. The assault infantry had been moving through the breach corridor in the intervals between armor vehicles and entering the trench from the south, while the Leopards and CV-90s suppressed from the north. The clearance produced 12 Russian prisoners and 34 dead. The 23 who were neither dead nor captured had withdrawn northeast toward the Russian second line 6 kilometers behind the first. The TB2 tracked the withdrawal and passed positions to the fire's cell. 3 HIMARS rockets impacted the 3 largest groups at 6:44 a.m. The groups stopped moving. The breakthrough was declared complete at 7:02 a.m., 1 hour and 27 minutes after the first vehicle entered the breach corridor. The 21st Brigade's lead elements were 2.4 kilometers beyond the original Russian forward trench. The damaged CV-90 had been recovered to a maintenance area at 6:51 a.m. Its crew had fought in a damaged vehicle for 49 minutes, firing 140 rounds of 40 mm that cleared 3 RPG teams from the northern junction and prevented what the assault infantry's after-action assessment described as a likely personnel casualty event. The engineering crew that had run the corridor under the assault phase's time pressure had created the passage without which none of what followed was possible. Each element had done its job. The breach was open. Each NATO weapon in the package had done its specific job. HIMARS did command disruption, Excalibur did Kornet elimination, GMLRS did jammer destruction, the Leopard main gun did covered position destruction, the CV-90's 40 mm did open trench suppression, the Javelin did armor overwatch, the RBS-70 did anti-drone terminal engagement, the M777 did counter battery at 3 minutes, the BMR-3MA did 3 nights and 1 assault morning of mine clearance. The TB2 held continuous ISR from H-90 to breakthrough declared. None were doing each other's jobs. All were doing their own jobs simultaneously. The breakthrough was the result of all 9 working at once, without any one of them sufficient alone. Don't miss the follow-up breakdown on the 21st Brigade's exploitation phase and the Russian second line's preparation as the breakthrough force closed toward it on March 5th afternoon. Subscribe to my channel and hit that bell. Breaking through a prepared Russian defensive position is not a question of whether the attacking force has enough courage. The positions that have been built along the Donetsk contact line have been built by engineers who understand combined arms warfare and who have been given months of time and resources to produce obstacles, fields of fire, and layered defensive depth. They are passable. The 21st Brigade proved that on Thursday morning. What makes them passable is not a single weapon system and not a single tactical innovation. It is the combination of precision intelligence, precision fires that address specific systems rather than areas, engineering that creates the physical passage, armor that can survive the residual threat after the fires, EW that keeps drones off the breach corridor, and a command architecture that allows every element to operate at its design speed without waiting for authority from above. The NATO weapons in that combination were the tools. The soldiers who operated them were the force. The training that connected the tools to the force was 18 months of deliberate partnership. The Russian defensive position that had been assessed as one of the most prepared on the contact line was 2.4 kilometers behind the 21st Brigade's forward elements at 7:02 a.m. on Thursday morning. Was the breakthrough at its core a fires story? The pre-assault HIMARS, Excalibur, and counter-battery sequence that eliminated the greatest threats before the armor moved? Or a combined arms integration story in which no single fire system was decisive, and the outcome depended on all of them working together? Type F for fires was the primary driver. Type Y for integrated combined arms was the decisive factor. Make your case below. 1 hour and 27 minutes, 12 meters wide at the narrowest point, 9 NATO weapon systems, each doing one specific job, 3 nights of engineering to make the first minute possible. The Russian position that was essentially impassable was 2.4 kilometers behind the assault force at 7:02 a.m. The next one was 6 kilometers further north. If this breakdown delivered the analysis you came here for, like the video, share it, and subscribe to my channel. Every fires mission, every weapon system, every tactical decision, we build it out completely. Which NATO weapon system do you think contributed most to the breakthrough on Thursday? And what does the Russian second line 6 kilometers north look like now that the 21st Brigade is moving toward it with the breach corridor open behind it? Drop both answers below.